That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to a podcast that really makes me feel old because that's right, Finding Nemo. 20 years old. Damn. Where does the time go, Dragon? This is a big one. This is we're really getting into the anniversaries where it's not just, last year with Lilo and Stitch, that was the big anniversary for the year. And that was truly like a formative childhood movie for me. But Finding Nemo, man, you know what, Dragon? I kind of have a nostalgic story to go along with this, but I'll kind of let you say your piece first on it, and then I can go. I don't want to steal any time from you, so go ahead.
Yeah, so that's right, folks. I mean, honestly, we're very much just kind of in it with this, the decade that we're in for sure. But it's just, '93, big year for a lot of things. I mean, a lot of anniversaries, as many people have noted. I mean, of course, there's whoops. Well, '93 for other things. I know this is 2000. The point being the threes in general. I mean, the year of three is kind of giving us a lot of stuff here because we got Nemo, we have Nightmare Before Christmas. You got Mask of the Phantasm. There's a lot of big stuff that happens in '93
Pirates of the Caribbean.
for sure. Yes. So yeah, we're hitting a lot of milestones, but again, kind of Nemo's the one that really hits you in the solar plexus. It's the sweet spot. It's 20 years. Truly one of Pixar's crown jewels in terms of the films that they've put out. I mean, this is very much kind of Pixar in the Book of Genesis era. In terms of this is Pixar when we're building the whole studio that makes the hit after hit sort of thing. The studio that is like not trying to repeat themselves. This is like a huge. I mean, yeah, right, this is like a huge benchmark of success for Pixar, and for good reason. I mean, not just for so many things. I mean, we have Andrew Stanton in the director's chair. I would attest. I mean, he's made a lot of great films, and this is most certainly this has got to be Andrew Stanton's masterpiece. When you look,
Oh yeah,
one that
absolutely.
this is like the blank check that essentially they come the blank check after this one for Wally. In a sense, this movie holds up. When revisiting it, I mean, I've revisited this movie often, but I mean, very recently, just going through with kind of a fine tooth comb, a little bit of distance between it. Yeah, it holds up just as fresh as a daisy. It's just as fresh as the day I saw it in terms of how this movie is. I mean, I've always said this about Nemo, and I'm hard pressed to find anyone to really disagree. I mean, I think it's in good company with something like a Goofy movie, but purely this is the ultimate Father's Day movie, hands down. It's got to be right. I mean, this is like
I literally put that in the video description. Yeah.
I know. Obviously, we're covering this like a little early because we're going for the actual anniversary more than we are just kind of something for Father's Day. But if we wanted to, again, just the perennial operative word, this is the Father's Day movie. Just Pixar upping their game with a new playing field completely. Again, we've done toys, we've done bugs, we've done monsters. We go underwater doing the fish.
Well, it's such a cocky move
Yeah.
because it's like, hey, you know what is notoriously hard to animate in 3D?
Water.
Water.
So what are we gonna do? A whole
Let's make a
movie.
movie that's completely set underwater.
Yep, yep. Oh god. So that's what I'm saying. With you got a different locale. You have fish as your stars because you got to remember again. We keep if you think about it, all the early Pixar films before we get to Incredibles, we're cheating the humanity angle. Okay, we got toys because plastic's easy to do in CG. We
Uh-huh.
got bugs. Don't need to worry about authenticity with bugs in terms like humans don't look like that. We go monsters. We have one human character, it's a little girl, and the rest are like plastic simulator guys.
Although,
you know?
granted, with monsters, I feel like the showing off in monsters case was definitely with the fur.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. We're finding cheats, but we're also finding new challenges that are going to dazzle everyone ultimately and stand
Like
the
with
test
Bugs
of
Life,
time.
the challenge with that one was just the amount of characters on screen at the same
Yeah.
time.
So that's the thing. This movie, it's I think this movie is also just very very well known for its well developed and endearing character work.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, as far as my nostalgia goes, to keep it simple, I mean, I saw Nemo in theaters as kids. Imagine many of us did, and it had an excellent DVD release. So you saw it in theaters, and it was like one of those movies you just had to have. I mean, very famous. This movie, like everyone and their mother owned the moment it came out. One of the highest selling of the Pixar DVDs, for sure. And yeah, I mean, there's all remember that trifecta. I know we keep wanting to do a podcast on this. We keep getting kind of preempted or some such stuff kind of redirects us. But with the amazing Pixar DVD releases, you had the trifecta. You had Monsters Inc., you had Finding Nemo, you had The Incredibles, right in a row, 3 in a
Oh
row.
yeah, oh yeah.
Because
And then I
it
feel
went
like The
back.
Incredibles was kind of just like the culmination. Like that was like the big one. I mean, all of them were great, but The Incredibles was just another level.
Now, let me be clear. I'm not trying to poo like Toy Story, but it's just the fact, folks, that initially Toy Story, when it was released, because of just the time it was released, that there were not features on those discs. And then
Mhm.
retroactively, during like I think it was the initial 10-year anniversary, as they went back and they kind of matched up like, oh, let's do the chock full of features we started once we had the facility and everything. And basically, once Pixar knew they were big with Monsters Inc. onward, and we kind of went back, and then you have a few kind of gaps in that, which then again Pixar now is like one of the only studios consistently makes good bonus features. But again, I'm getting off topic just to refocus it a bit here. Yeah, just this movie. It's a harrowing story of what a parent will do for their child, just utilized in the visage of kids' fare, but just this utterly enthralling story for everyone 20 years later. So that's why it holds up as well as it does. This is something that's a very relatable and kind of adult story. But again, it's the movie about the fish. It's the little fish movie. But it's a whale of a good time.
All right, so Dragon, I actually rewatching this thing, I actually kind of came to some realizations that like because Finding Nemo, I think it kind of sits up there with like the Ratatouilles of the world, Ratatouille, Monsters Inc., Incredibles. I feel like Cars. I like Cars a lot. That's about the only one in the 2000s. That's a little bit of a mixed bag. Not a perfect movie, but it's up there with just like you think of it as just perfection, and that's kind of like what I've always viewed it as. But what I realized on a rewatch, and this is the first time, like because it's one of those situations where, as a kid, like you said, Dragon, everyone owned this movie. It was much like Monsters Inc. This was one of the movies that would be watched over and over again on during school, like if it was like the last day of school or a rainy day or something. This was a go-to. So this is the first time that I've watched it with like adult eyes. Probably the first time that I've watched it in full since we started the podcast. I may have revisited it like around the time Finding Dory came out, but that was still like that was still a while ago.
Yeah,
And what I realized about it was this came out when I was 12 years old. And Dragon, this movie, it was a very specific turning point for me where I will admit, when I saw the trailers, Dragon, what you just said of, oh, it's the Pixar fish movie, I got to admit, I was a cynical little 12-year-old about that concept. And I was at that age, where we all kind of go through this phase where we get a little self-conscious about cartoons. And, I was a rebellious 12-year-old, and the original Spider-Man had come out the year beforehand. So my interests were very much at the time started to drift towards, Spider-Man, X-Men, the comic book side of things. Dragon, there was a very real chance that I wasn't even really looking to see this thing in theaters, because I remember I was at that awkward age where it was like I was too old to go to the movies with my parents to a certain extent. But with kids' movies, I kind of felt, like embarrassed about it, and I very much don't feel this way anymore. This is one of those movies that kind of got me over that sort of social anxiety hump of, okay, you know what? This isn't a cartoon. This is a real movie. It is a film with a moving plot and just awesome character work and stellar animation. And I remember just when this came out and the reviews were very, very high on it. I think for a long time, this was considered probably a lot of people's number one Pixar movie out of that initial lineup. And then, so I knew I had to see it just based on the reviews. And I'm so glad I did. I saw it like 3 times in theaters. I mean, between Finding Nemo and the original Pirates of the Caribbean, it was a hell of a summer for Disney. And yeah, I mean, it's just a stone cold classic. And I truly think that this movie holds up even better, like, as good as all the other Pixar movies have been up until this point, Dragon. I think this is the real turning point with Finding Nemo, I feel like, is that while the same thing might be able to be said to a certain extent for Monsters, Inc., I think this is the first Pixar film that truly plays better when you're an adult than when you're a kid. When you're a kid, don't get me wrong, it's great. You get all the enjoyment out of the comic relief and the colors and the excitement. But oh man, Dragon, those themes just hit you in the face when you're an adult. So yeah, seeing it through adult eyes, very, very very interesting, illuminating experience for me. Okay, so just to shout out some comments here. Theme Park Priest says, we passed through the murky middle, Tiki. Indeed, the murky middle. That's a good way to put it. Also, Lucas Green, he says, one of Disney Pixar's serious films, I'd say. And yeah, like I said, Lucas, that's kind of one of the reasons this sticks out to me so much in Pixar's catalog, is that it is a very family-friendly movie, but it's just so resonant from an adult perspective. And then Lucas says, there's so many different types of water. It's a very visually beautifully looking feel. And also the slow, calming music gels so well with the soothing pace of the ocean. Yeah, the music just, it's spectacular.
Great Thomas Newman, folks.
It might be like, I don't think it's my favorite score because, like, I still to this day maintain that the Inside Out soundtrack can just be listened to as a standalone piece of music, and it almost works as a concept album about emotions. But I mean, I think the music in this movie maybe fits the actual film the best out of any Pixar movie.
It's real quick about the music. Isn't it nice that for the most part, I'm not saying it's a perfect like analogy, but I mean, for Stanton, I think it's probably works best. Each director kind of has like a signature composer in the Pixar films, at least for the most part, where Andrew Stanton's Thomas Newman for his 3 films. Pete Docter, majority of which is Giacchino, but you have Randy Newman with Monsters, Inc., obviously. But again, that was the thing. They were basically the ideas in the early Pixar films. They kept using Randy Newman. Then at a certain point, they said, let's shake it up a bit and get other people in there. So we're not going to use Randy Newman. We're going to use his cousin.
Right.
But it's the fact that we're kind of like there's kind of a signature kind of sound to certain Pixar films that are kind of associated mostly with certain Pixar directors. Again, not a perfect like thing. It's like a patented rule or anything, but at least for like some of the big two, there's kind of like a style in terms of the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, we have Warp Monarch in the comments saying Finding Nemo is one of the films that made me appreciate the ocean.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Tiki, do you remember the Jean-Michel Cousteau video?
I can't say I do.
Yeah, it was on the bonus features for Nemo. You had the little crossover between Jean-Michel Cousteau and Nemo and friends. Like Marlon Dory and Nemo. Basically, it's like he was going undersea and he kept bumping into him and he kept talking with him. They kept throwing him off as he's trying to educate people about the reef and everything. He's
God!
Ticked off at Dory. It's really funny.
All right. So, Dragon, I know you got a lot of backstory, but let's keep it, as condensed as we can, because I realize in this case we can make a whole podcast
on the
backstory.
There's a lot of juicy backstory. I'm going to try and condense it to, okay, so,
Dragon, let me tell you about a lunch.
Yeah, we got to start with that. Okay, so, to keep it brief, so it all starts at the Hidden City Cafe, which is where the Brain Trust, the original core 4 at Pixar, the guys that founded it all, They basically had this lunch at the Hidden City Cafe in '94. This is about a year right before Toy Story is about to come out, and basically putting the finishing touches on everything. And basically, they're kind of wondering, well, we're coming to a close on something that could change everything and give us a bite at the apple. If we were to do other films, what kind of subjects would we tackle? So it's kind of a general kind of layout of like potential films they could do, and that included Bugs Life. Like, let's do a movie about bugs. Let's do a movie about monsters. Let's do a movie about fish, and then let's do a movie about a robot, which of course, like
Mhm.
Wall-E. So those are the initial kind of like that was the original game plan for Pixar between the original core four forces there. So the core idea for Nemo of those suggestions for Andrew Stanton was Andrew Stanton. He took his son to Marine World in '94. Marine World had this, which now it's like Six Flags something. At least at a certain time it was. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, remind me when we. I have stuff to say about Marine Roll, but I don't want to cut you off. So remind me, and I'll interject.
Essentially, there's like this little area in Marine World where there's like this little kind of like archway, and that was basically gave you a sense that you're inside the reef and you're seeing the fish around you. So basically, it was the genesis of like Toy Story. Like, hey, plastic looks good in animation. Well, hey, here's a way we can kind of cheat humans. We can do fish, and that'd be amazing with what we can do in CG and kind of explore the camera angles within the water. And so it was kind of that plus the famous story about Andrew Stanton and his son. In '97, when they were developing Nemo, so basically Andrew Stanton, okay, I'm going to do a fish movie, and that was just kind of the building blocks in Nemo. It was a fish movie. I'm going to do a father-son story because I was there with my kid when I saw this, and then he was going for a walk in the park with his son in '97 when they're starting to develop Nemo. And basically kind of kept being overprotective with his son. It kind of gave him the idea of like fear can stop a father from being a good father. Fear
Mhm.
can get in the way of being a good father. And that's basically where he got to the heart of what the story is for Finding Nemo, along with just kind of the general like broad strokes of what he was going for. So the core treatment was all Andrew Stanton, but then through the course of making the film, he brought on Bob Peterson and Lee Unkrich to co-direct, and they had like a lot of flavor and kind of fresh eyes to the story, and had a lot of the gags and a lot of the kind of the editing, kind of like basically the reason this movie is so wonderfully paced, I would attribute to Lee Unkrich, who was an editor extraordinaire on the Toy Story films. And of course, there's always kind of the editing was very much his strong suit, and I think that kind of added to kind of how well paced things were. So let's see. So of course, with Pixar, research is key. Research is key, and research is of the utmost importance. So they did a lot of marine life research, which showed up in the film. They all got certified for scuba diving. They went to like Mariana Trench. They went to the I'm sorry, they went to Monterey, went to Hawaii. They went all over the place. Did a lot of research. They were scanning, like fish into the computer, like essentially dead fish into the computer, so they get the textures right and everything. They did research from top to bottom, and it's also by the same token, it's like Andrew Stanton just kind of lucked into the clownfish. He always just saw the clownfish on the National Geographic. He opened a coffee table book. He saw, like, hey, these two fish look like father and son. Let's make them clownfish. It's that simple. Now, famously, making Finding Nemo. This is amazing. It always floors me. They did a test, an animation test, to see if they could even attempt this movie in CG. Where basically it's like, okay, how close can we possibly get it? Where they took some documentary footage and they matched it in the computer, and it was for 2003 roughly, or at least in the process of 2003 era Pixar. It was seamless. It was like 1-to-1. This is real life. It looks identical. You can put them side by side. You cannot tell which is which, but then lies the problem. Oh God, it's the uncanny valley
Yeah,
potential. It's like
yeah,
it's
it's
going to
too
be
real. That's so
it's too
trippy.
real. How are we going to animate? I mean, this looks amazing, yes, but we're not making a documentary. We're making an animated film. We need these fish to talk.
Dragon, John Favreau just shed a single tear when you just said we're not making a documentary. I
Yeah.
want you to know that.
Well, he can dab himself off with Star Wars, though. He can cry into his Star Wars money. So, anyway, let's see. So that's things. It was the challenge of how do you make a fish face appealing and animatable. And, there's a lot of, and also like how the heck does a fish move, and how do we basically it's like a head with barely a body. Like how the heck does that work? So again, we did a lot of tricks of the trade there, and also a lot of rendering, and kind of like how do we do a lot of simulators, like how do we simulate an anemone, and we basically do a sort of like a Sully's hair effect. There's a lot of really great odds and ends that went into it. In terms of the voice cast, real quick, William H. Macy originally was Marlin.
That would have been so. I'm glad that didn't happen.
It's funny enough, though. Again, this is like showing you how far they were going to go with this initially. William H. Macy recorded the whole story reel, so like he recorded essentially what's tantamount to the whole movie, and then they say, William, we're going to go a different way.
I mean, Albert Brooks is just so, like, I'm sure we'll talk about it in length, but he's just so perfect. He's almost the glue that ties everything together.
Dory was not going to be female, but then once they hit upon, like, no, we should make Dory female, then they only had one choice in mind. It had to be Ellen DeGeneres. It had to be her, because I think there was a time that they're entertaining Megan Mullally, but then it kind of went belly up. But then they just kind of realized, okay, we absolutely... Like Ellen DeGeneres, like he was just watching her on TV. He's like, she's changing subject like Dory would. We got to bring her in this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see rapid fire. A few quick things. We're just going to jump into it. Okay. Andrew Stan had to pitch the entire film like as if it were a one-man show. He's had to describe the whole film, like no visuals. Just had to talk about the movie to like a whole auditorium. I don't know if they used the El Capitan Theater or not. They pitched the whole movie to a whole room full of executives and marketing guys to prove the viability of this concept. Because for some reason, everyone was really scared. Like Nemo, it was almost like the whole in Waking Sleeping Beauty. It was like the whole Pocahontas Lion King effect, where everyone was excited about Incredibles. Nemo was very much kind of like, okay, we're doing.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like you can't say The Incredibles was a Pocahontas.
I know I can't say that using that as a one-for-one comparison, but it's just
right. Yeah,
it was kind of a thing where everyone was really devoting a lot of attention to Incredibles, and Nemo was kind of the unsure bet because it's like.
I mean, like The Incredibles. I think one of the reasons why people were so focused on that is because it literally had like the new rock star director just rolling into town. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Brad was showing up like the guy who did Iron Giant's gonna be in the studio. Oh my god!
Right.
Which, to be fair, would be my reaction too. But yes. So anyway, so point me, Stan had a lot of pressure on his shoulders here. So I understand he pitched it. Went over great. Everyone's loving the idea for the movie. They discovered the famous Love Lounge in this. The Love Lounge is like this hidden room in one of the Pixar animators' offices. This is right after they got the new building. Andrew Gordon in his office is like a little compartment, and if you crawl through this compartment as if it were like an elevator, like it were an air conditioner shaft or something, like a little air vent.
Oh wow.
And I don't think there's a door to the Love Lounge or not. I think it's like this is the only way you get in. You crawl through this little vent. And there's like a hidden room that they decorate into being kind of this cool little kind of like break room lounge. It looks real nice and classy, and they have like autographs everywhere of all the people who've been in the Love Lounge. It's really cool. So ultimately, again, I could bore you all day all the cool fish facts of Nemo, but let's just say, end of the day, highest grossing animated film of all time until Shrek 2 happens the following year. And it won Pixar its first Best Animated Feature Oscar. And of course, stands test of time. We have Turtle Talk, we have Attractions, we have Ad Infinitum, and eventually we get a sequel with Finding Dory, which Ellen DeGeneres was very happy about after campaigning for it for over a decade.
All right. Lucas Green says, would you guys say this is more Marlin's film or Nemo's? It seems like 60% Marlin, 40% Nemo. I mean, I would say it's right in the title. It's like Finding Nemo. Mm-hmm. For me, it means it's Marlin's movie as much as Nemo is in, like, he is the title character, but the story of the movie all revolves around Marlin.
Folks, I think there's a very easy answer to this question. I would direct you to the poster here. You will notice many fish characters. You'll notice who's missing, though.
Oh, that's trippy. I never even noticed that before. That's crazy.
And this was one of the big posters, too, for the movie. So, yeah, you'll notice Nemo is not there because we are finding him.
Just no Nemo, no Tank Gang.
Huh. No, the Tank Gang's right there.
Oh, you're right. They are there. Oh, that's crazy.
The tank Gang's there. Nemo's not.
Oh, man. Okay. And then Lucas Green says, what's your guys' favorite creature encounter? Lucas, I'm sure we can answer that as we go on. I
I have one in mind. I know exactly what mine is. We'll get
right. So, and you know what? Since this movie is pretty episodic, that should give us some good leeway to move about. But first, Dragon, we need to talk about the cold open, because this is big, man. This is huge.
The egg scene is like the pivotal scene of the movie.
Like, I would say this had as much impact on the development of Pixar moving forward into like more mature storytelling as Jesse's song did in Toy Story 2.
Oh, for sure, it's the elevation of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pivotal tone setting opening scene, and I don't know if I'm gonna tick people off by saying this, but I'm gonna be frank. Outclasses Bambi by a country mile to me. I mean, at least to me. Bambi, of course, going to stand the test of time of
Well, I
this.
mean, to be fair, Mufasa also outclasses Bambi.
Well, there you go then. I mean,
like, I think Bambi has long since in that department.
Okay, well,
I
fine.
still love Bambi as a movie. Like, it's still, like, naturalistically beautiful.
All right, either way, even honestly, even by Mufasa, I won't go as far as say outclasses, but I'm going to say for me, beats out Mufasa for me.
What about Littlefoot's mom?
Yeah, no, easily for Littlefoot's mom for me. Yeah.
Oh, them fighting words.
Again, I'm not saying outclasses.
For me, I don't know. It's just it's the nostalgia in me, but I don't think anything's going to beat Littlefoot's mom for me.
Just talking about the scene that we do have here. So now, what fascinates me about this scene too is originally this was intended to be kind of a flashback. This was supposed to be broken up and told in flashback. And even so, the original plan for this scene was still going to be really good, but it did have one big hole in it. So essentially, we were going to see how Marlin and Coral met, and then how they found the house and everything, and then of course she's with child, and then we would have the scene that we do have in the movie. And then we would have this amazing thing in the climax where we kind of tell the tragic part of this scene, intercut it with the climax of the film with like the whole just swim down thing. It would have been, that's the thing that fascinates me most of the original structuring of this, where it would have been really well intercut. But there's one salient problem that our opening, the way we have it, fixes in the best way possible. We would learn all this throughout the course of the movie.
Which would make Marlin a big jerk in the opening act.
Essentially, yes. The problem is, like, the whole movie would be like, man, why is Marlin so annoying? And he's
right.
And he's saying, you would wonder why the whole movie, and you'd probably speculate, and then you're like, oh, probably something bad happened to him. And then you'd see, oh God, no wonder he's been that way. I feel so sorry for Marlin. But you learn that way too late in the movie. So they had the genius idea of, okay, let's just tell all that up front. Lee Unkrich, by the way, is the one who came up with this idea. Like, hey, because it being the masterful editor that he is, like, no, let's not do flashback, because already we're juggling an A story and a B story, and the B story is kind of broken up nicely throughout the movie. Basically, the B story is kind of spread out the way this flashback structure would have been. That's essentially how it works. So it would have been like a third one we would have had to tell. Anyway, the scene itself, though, it's just this. This scene tells us everything we need to know about Marlin as a character, and it's flawless. And again, this is the reason that when you look back on this movie as an adult, it really resonates. And for me as a kid, Tiki, this scene it had such an impact on me in terms of, like, not for a moment was I like going to the kid. I was with the father throughout the whole movie because of what he's endured, and I absolutely got that perspective.
No, yeah, absolutely.
And just think about how rare that is. I mean, again, short of something like a Goofy movie, in which you are absolutely understanding and loving the father character in an animated kids movie, or usually it's like we're going to the kid because that's where you're.
To be fair, I mean, as much as I love Goofy movie, like Goofy does pull some annoying shit in that movie, and you are on Max's side as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. But it's just the fact that how rare is that in which it's a kids movie in which you are intended to be absolutely with the father and you're not really wavering away from that. They have their insurance with Dory. Don't get me wrong. If there's any concern of like, in case people don't like father, we're going to give them like some fun, kind of nice counterbalance there, and we're going to get to her momentarily. But still, it's just that always amazed me with like the strength of Nemo's story, in which this was probably my introduction to Albert Brooks, to be frank. I mean, Albert Brooks.
Oh, I can't say it was for me because of The Simpsons.
Well, that's like for you. You had The Simpsons. Technically, for me, I had Dr. Dolittle because he's the tiger in Dr. Dolittle, but it never really dawned on me that's Albert Brooks. This is like when it's like a formal introduction. Like, this is Albert Brooks. And I think I would stand. I mean, there's a lot of great Albert Brooks performances out there, but for me, this has to be. I would argue, bizarrely, this is like the best performance he's ever given anything.
I mean, I haven't seen all of his live action work, but yeah, from what I have seen, I would say so.
I mean, it's good, but I think at the very least, I think this is the most layered we've ever gotten with Albert Brooks, short of like Defending Your Life. That's probably the second. That's probably the second most layered we've ever gone with him. This is probably the most. Like, we give him such a great multifaceted character in terms of this guy who was like looking so forward to fatherhood. Everything was going right for him. He had prime real estate. He had a loving wife. He had all the 400 kids. And then the Barracuda struck. And dear God, this bear, and it was even more brutal. The one thing I can say about that flashback is you hinted that at seeing the Barracuda eat the babies. That was horrifying.
Yeah, Wart Monarch says as much. He says he shudders every time he thinks about it.
That's a thing, and you actually saw that in that flashback structure, kids. You actually saw the Barracuda's tail sticking out of that hole while he was, it's just horrifying. So the point being, though, the Barracuda attack, it's brutal. Like, he kills his wife, and then all but one of his kids, and even the one kid that survives gets maimed because of this Barracuda. So this is like one of the most tragic, like gobsmacking ways to open an animated film ever.
And it's all before the title.
Yes. So just you have this character suffer this unfathomable loss in a kids movie, and you understand absolutely why Marley.
What's really great about this is that, like, we as an audience, like, we're going in, most likely everyone in the audience is going in knowing the general premise that Nemo is going to get separated from the father. It is literally in the title.
You're going this
like
movie.
It makes the title Finding Nemo hit so much harder because it's like you realize, like, oh shit, like they are going to get separated and it is going to be an emotional blow.
It just brilliant when you think about it, okay? Because as you said, you're going this movie, you're expecting the separation because it's in the premise. Because if Nemo doesn't get lost in the movie, it's false advertising of the highest. But just the simple idea, and Pixar just taking the simple, straightforward approach, but just kind of like doing the kind of exploded view on it, the way they do so wonderfully, just it's great. So the idea that why is this such a big deal? Why is it such a big deal that he's lost his son outside the fact that, okay, father, son, that's the main reason why it is, but why? Like, why does it matter? Like, why is this such kind of a groundbreaking reveal? Like, how are we going to really make this count? And just showing that, okay, he promised this injured child, the last surviving injured child that he named after like the one name that his wife suggested before she died, that he'd protect him. And he's such a vulnerable state, like a tiny little egg in his little fins. Just the best sell of a father-son story ever. I mean, test of time, just dear God. And then, of course, we go from that to like the perennial thing that every parent has ever gone through ever, the first day of school. So all of this is just stacking up greatly in terms of when, like, just how to string all these events together. Like the tragedy to the first day of school to the separation.
Okay, Warp Monarch, I see your comment. I don't want to necessarily read it out loud because that is pretty twisted, man. I do not want to look that up. Yeah, Dragon, in regards to your flashback thing, the flashback structure, I just have one thing to say, and that's, I feel like that kind of storytelling really does work well. Like, we literally just saw it with Guardians Volume 3. But I feel like it works better in the context of like a sequel where, like with Guardians, we already spent 2 movies with Rocket. So it's like, we know why he's hardened at this point. So it's, so I don't want to disregard that storytelling. And I'm sure that the version of the movie that we would have gotten would have been powerful with that storytelling in place. It just is. And you did speak to the editing. The editing in this movie, I mean, my God, this might be one of the best paced films ever.
Tiki, again, it's the philosophy that Brad Bird kind of emboldened in the hallways of Pixar very well, but still encapsulated perfectly here. We use every part of the buffalo. They used every part of the buffalo. Not a single frame of footage was wasted in this film.
So just with this first day of school stuff, like, first of all, we have, just the animation, man. This just kind of seeing the community, the environment, the coral reef setting, the lighting of the water. I mean, it's a big wow moment, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Again, like the fact, like how it's kind of thing. Like you look at the opening of The Shape of Water, for example. The opening of The Shape of Water, it's like we set the whole apartment underwater, and when you think about how the heck do we shoot that sort of thing, it's like we have to simulate like water because we're not actually underwater. We're not even CG in the water except for maybe a few bubbles. It's a blue environment. We're putting everything on wires to make it look like it's floating. Now, That's in live action. You look at Nemo, we got to create all that from scratch, and we have to, again, it's kind of working with the same blank canvas, only you literally have to create everything from scratch. So basically, that's
And this is literally just the establishing shot to the world.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, so we populate with kind of like a coral reef, but then we have to add like caustic lights, and we have to add just kind of like the shifting tides, and we have to add like the particle system. It's like a lot of things combined to make all that work and be seamless as it is.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so also real quick, one more thing about the flashback, just the good, like the positive side note about the flashback is that it was such a good idea, and I'm so glad this happened. I remember telling you when we talked about Finding Dory, like I was so thrilled in the theater watching it for the first time because I knew that flashback story at the back of my hand, and
Right.
watching.
Yeah,
I was
did
like
give
cheering
that,
in
that's a
my
good
head.
example. Yeah.
Like in the theater, I was in my head going out of my mind, like he found a way. They did like in Toy Story 2. In Toy Story 2, they recycled the deleted scenes from Toy Story and put them in the sequels. Like they did it for Nemo too, and it worked.
Right.
Yes, they did for Dory. Yeah. Anyway, so first day of school again. The universal perennial fear that the kids going to school, and only Marlon has severe separation anxiety for good reason. And so the fact that again we've taken just that universal thing, but added like it's this element of tragedy. So he's handing the kid off to Mr. Ray. Of course, Mr. Ray, voiced by the wonderful Bob Peterson.
Yeah, Mr. Ray. I mean, that's one of the things about this movie, Dragon, is that every single damn character is just iconic in their own way, and Mr. Ray is no exception. And I feel like, I mean, even down to the other dads in the school, you know what I mean? It's like they all have just such good personality beats. Like there's no character, no moment that is wasted. You get, any character that is on screen, they get fully fleshed out in their own way.
Yeah, it's that's funny. I mean, when I look at this movie, I'm not saying this is like we weren't in the room. I can't say that this is like cleanly how it broke down, but it looks like Stan brought the heart and the overall story. Unkridge brought the editing and how we tell the story. And Bob Pearson was the gag. That's what it feels like. But I feel like Bob Pearson.
I can totally see that. Yeah.
I think overall it's kind of how like Stan kind of laid everything out. And then these two guys came on. They basically kind of made the movie iconic. It seems they've kind of helped kind of bolster things. It's a mixture of everything. Of course, like Mr. Like, he's always the singing science.
I mean, that song is just iconic, man. I mean, what more needs to be said about it?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the drop. So the drop off is another kind of eureka moment for the movie because I understand you had gone snorkeling before, and basically as a kid, because you grew up in Massachusetts. You grew up in New England, I should say. Sorry. Anyway, so he
coastal town.
Yeah, exactly. So the point being, he would see the void. He called it the void. The void essentially is what the drop off is in this movie, in which you look out, and this is like the big symbol of the movie along with Nemo's fin. It's the symbol of uncertainty. It's the symbol of you look out into the distance and you see just this void of this blue void of just it's obscured by distance and everything. You can't see what's out there, and it's like it's the glass half full, glass half empty. It's the fact that anything could be out there, anything good in terms of like beauty and splendor of the undersea, and anything in terms of God, who knows what menace and danger is out there.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So Marlon, he hears the drop off, he panics because remember, Marlon, the house in the opening was overlooking the drop off, so it's essentially the same location, not the exact same, but it's on the same patch of real estate. Essentially, it's the same like. When I lost my whole family, it was by the drop-off. I don't want Nemo by the drop-off, and I can understand that fear.
Exactly, yeah.
So we go there, he panics, and then we have him just being very overprotective, and this really makes Nemo feel really down on himself, and he just says, like, the moment every parent has at some point, I hate you. And this on the rewatch. I mean,
just the I hate you, but also the whole like you think you can do these things, but you can't. I mean, it's just like it's the classic, parent and and child dynamic. It's the classic struggle, where it's like you want the best for your kid and you want to protect them, but at the same time you want them to grow to be their own person.
Yeah, and I mean, with Nemo's fin, you have this visual reminder from Marlon every time he looks at him. Every time his son, he thinks his son is a victim of trauma that the son is not cognizant of, essentially. That, I'm sure
Right, right, right.
there have probably been questions about the mother, but it's just the fact that like Nemo is not a strong swimmer, and that little crack is a symbol to Marlin every time he looks at his son of like the loss that has occurred and like why he has to protect this kid.
I think the fin is just like such a perfect like. I feel like this movie like very much exists in the same kind of space as Lilo and Stitch, where it's like the fin could represent any number of different disabilities.
Yeah, I mean this movie. Goes broader and more ambiguous with it with the fin, where Finding Dory has it with with Dory's memory, kind of
Sure,
issue. So
sure.
either way, both of these movies do wonderfully look into just kind of like the a child with a defect of some kind, but doesn't get in the way of like of them being able to live their lives, but definitely has an impact and has either in this case more of a reminder for Marlin, but in terms of like Nemo, he gets better at swimming throughout the film, and it definitely pays off the whole swim down thing. So Nemo does learn tricks of the trade here, and again, on his own, he has to learn this. Marlin is kind of coddling him and saying, like, if he has trouble swimming, just give him like 15 minutes. It's all this sort of. It's embarrassing to Nemo, making him like really concerned.
Yeah.
But, my son is different, but again, in a loving way, though, not in like a. But Nemo's okay. So here's the thing kind of hit me on the rewatch. It really kind of hit me in the solar plexus when I realized this. When Nemo says "I hate you," it calls back to it's a gag. It's kind of an offhanded joke that we have in the opening before the tragedy strikes. Or Marlin, we do Albert Brooks doing like the the neuroses that again I just love. Neurotic characters are always fun, by the way. At least most of the time, they're almost when done right, they're fun, and we do that perfectly with Albert Brooks here as Marlin. And we have this gag where he says like, "What if they don't like me? There's 400 kids. I'm sure one of them's going to like you." So when it dawns on you, Nemo saying "I hate you" to his father with that neuroses in mind is like, oh man, it's like Marlin's like he lost.
Yeah, that's a good call.
He's kind of lost everything in that moment. It's just he fear again. He's been doing his best, and he's made his son hate him. And this is like a fear that he had when he was still optimistic about fatherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we don't know how time works with the fish thing. I mean, we're not really marine biologists here. I mean, I don't know how long it's been for Nemo to grow into. I don't know if we're going like by fish years or not. We don't know how long it has passed between the tragedy and now. So, I don't know. Okay, so the traumatizing kidnapping of Nemo. Let's talk about that.
You know what I love is I forgot I forgot the detail that P. Sherman is actually actually thinks that he's rescuing the fish.
Yeah. He thinks
and folks, let's just be clear. That is a great conservation message.
I mean, think about it. There are no villains in this movie per se in terms of. We have man, just in the sense of man.
Yes, man.
Yes, we have man, more like girl, but we're gonna get there. we have man being irresponsible in the sense of like we're kind of messing with nature. Like there's an environmental message, but not like a hard pedal environmental message. It's sort of like let's leave the fish alone. Let's just appreciate the fish and maybe.
Well, I think it's like kind of like again, it's like much like the disability representation. I feel like it's a good kind of metaphor for just like like leaving nature alone in general. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So I'm saying because of that, we have like
it's like you never know the circumstances,
and even like the seemingly the most villainous thing, like the anglerfish, which we'll get to again. This is like a big thing in the movie, and that the movie's supposed to is facing this challenge of like, can we represent nature without having to soften it for a kids movie, in which things are going to try and eat you in the ocean, and it's going to be scary. Okay, Marlin is going to be justified in the fear of the ocean. We can't just soft pedal that. So but that doesn't make the
Witch Dragon, just to bookmark it, the sea turtle thing, just oh my god, just screenwriting setup and payoff 101.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I was gonna wait till we get there to talk about all that, but yes.
Well, I'm saying like just because it got set up in the opening.
That's what I'm saying. So just the fact that we have nature being what it is. Again, we have people that fish are going to try and eat other fish. It doesn't make them monsters, even if they look like monsters like the anglerfish. It's just kind of like nature taking its course there. So it's kind of like it's kind of Bambi with an edge to a degree,
Bambi with an edge, but also Bambi with a little bit more of a personality, and Bambi with a way better pace.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I love Bambi. I love it. But I love Bambi as a piece of art, not necessarily as a piece of entertainment.
I mean, look, this is going to sound harsh, but it's better Bambi.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Get her Bambi. Let's be
I mean,
honest.
to be fair, I think Lion King is kind of like the more apt comparison there, but
Well, no,
like,
yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah.
but no, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like there is some comparison because again, like with Bambi, I don't want to just. I love Bambi. It's in my
That's what I'm
top
saying.
10 Disney
I don't want to like kick Bambi while he's down. I don't want to like kick him
movies.
off legs.
But Bambi is not an entertaining movie. Bambi is an artistically ambitious and beautiful movie, and
Exactly.
that's the difference. Anyways,
If Bambi and Lion King had a baby, it would be Finding Nemo.
I mean, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Okay, so traumatizing kidnapping, which again, in retrospect, is like you have this silly dentist who's diving down there and kidnapping our fish. But again, he's not like a mustache troll or anything. He's not like doing it to be cruel. He's just saying he thought it was the
You
little
know what?
guy.
I do love that he is just like an almost dangerously inept dentist, though.
Yeah, I know that too. I mean, however, again, if you notice, it's subtle. I don't know if you picked up on this or not, because I remember this, but I forgot like just how well set up this was. He is like a go-to dentist in Sydney. If you notice, he has a lot of dental awards, and he was working on the Prime Minister.
I missed the Prime Minister thing.
Yeah, when the guy whose tooth he removes, like when Nigel's kind of burst through the glass and everything, he says like he just like removes it by shock and accident. Oh well, it's a good thing it was the right tooth, Prime Minister. There you go. Okay, so anyways, yeah, so we kidnaps Neo, but again, the way we do this, I love that we have this great. It's a little. We're gonna geek out so much about this movie, kids. I'm sorry. When he takes the picture of Marlin, I love that this makes sense. Like this is why Marlin is kind of delayed because he's been flashed in the eyes and he's kind of like getting his bearings, and it's like a foreign thing that's being brought down. There's like a big blinding flash, and and you see from the perspective of Marlin, he's just trying to put two and two together, like the old fish eyes effect. And just Marlin giving, and this is what I love about Marlin, man. It's like a Batman quality. I love a character. It's all about willpower and just like putting their all into saving someone. It's like
When he's
Marlin
trying to
is,
swim against the ocean, like
yeah,
literally against the tide of the ocean.
yes, just Marlin giving it his all in that chase. And again, it's like the big thing they convey a lot in this movie is the child the child fantasy of if the chips were down, could my father be Superman? That's essentially the way Andrew Stanton's kind of put it. And I think it's absolutely correct. And that it's kind of like that fantasy of like if something bad were to happen, you'd want your parents to kind of get you out of Dodge if you were a kid. In this case, the idea of like what if you saw like again, this is like it's like a true crime thing for a kids movie that we're seeing right now. We've seen the kidnapping of the son,
Oh God!
Marlon is like it's that horrific moment in any true crime like movie or show or anything where you have like the parent giving their all going after. Only we actually gave it like we didn't just like offhandedly and commercial break. It's like no, he's actually the horrific aftermath of like he's chasing after that boat with all
That's
he's
actually
got.
a really good point. Yeah.
He's chasing after that boat with all he's got, but then you have that moment, Tiki, when he goes to the surface and he's realized he's lost direction because he's
Mm-hmm.
in the ocean. It's like and it's just that no. And that's what I'm saying. Albert Brooks' performance is just gobsmackingly honest and genuine. And Albert Brooks does not like voice acting, by the way. Despite his appearances on Simpsons, it's just the fact that he hasn't done a feature. Not counting the Simpsons movie, because he just kind of pops in there. I'm saying for like a full-on lead
Well, he
character
doesn't. To
role.
be fair, he doesn't just pop in there. He's the main villain in the Simpsons movie.
Let me rephrase that. The fact that he's not, he's not the lead of the film in The
Uh
Simpsons.
huh.
Okay, so the fact that he's not like the point being that Brooks is not crazy about voice work, and that even so, Simpsons moves after Nemo, so I guess he's gotten used to it by then. This is the fact that at this time when he's doing this, Albert Brooks doing a full feature in which comedians are very self-conscious and they never do the same line twice. So this is very, and he's not really in the room with anyone.
Simpsons, he was very well known for playing different
Yeah.
characters. Like even in the Simpsons movie, like everyone wanted him to do Hank Scorpio.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a better movie if it was Hank Scorpio, frankly.
In retrospect, bro.
But
you see my point. There's the fact that Albert Brooks really was out of his depth when he did this movie, and he did a phenomenal job.
right.
Anyways, just like the whole no, and it's just he's like begging everyone for help, and then he bumps in the door. Yeah. So our pacing is just flawless here. Against
Oh yeah.
And again, we're using every part of the Buffalo. There's no momentum drop. Again, there's the only time we take breaks from our story is the juxtapose this and the Tank Gang story, and we just again we're only in places where we'd actually need a story break just to show, like, okay, big explosion has happened. Okay, let's check in with Nemo, and then we're going to go back to Father and see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Claude, he's saying, imagine we get a live action Finding Nemo. Claude, don't give him ideas. Don't give them ideas, please.
Claude, my answer to that is we have Taken. There we go. There's our live action Finding
So, Theme Park Priest, how would it work? Theme Park Priest, it would work exactly the same way that The Lion King worked. Just the whole, like, oh, we're going to make it a documentary. It's going to be a documentary.
You got to admit, wouldn't that be funny if, like, someone said, okay, we're going to remake Finding Nemo. Okay, how do we do it? We're going to use CG, and there's, like, a quiet, like, cricket sound. Just like, there's a little problem with that. It's like literally the only way.
P. Sherman would be like the go-to human character in that movie, which would be really weird.
It's like literally the only way you could possibly remake Finding Nemo is like, we're gonna clip out the same movie. The only difference is that we're gonna do the Wall-E thing where we had the brief moments of live action. Andrew Stanton also did. We're gonna bring him back just to do the same thing. Okay, we're just gonna Andrew Stanton basically we're on George Lucas back when that was a thing. George Lucas, we're gonna have live action, the actors for the dentist scenes. We're gonna integrate them with CG, and that's all we're gonna do. To be like,
yeah. Oh God, I mean, I believe it or not, I actually liked the Little Mermaid remake better than most of the live action remakes. But even still, we do not need to see that kind of character design in Finding Nemo. Just no.
No.
Okay.
What about Dory?
Yes. So Dory, I will admit, Dragon, I was a little bit worried that going into this rewatch, that Ellen DeGeneres' current, troubles would kind of overshadow the film, and I've got to admit, no, I'm pleasantly surprised that the character works very, very strong. And granted, I don't want to make, I don't want to get into the Ellen stuff, but the character work is just really good. I would say that Dory and Marlin are kind of like, with all due respect to Buzz and Woody, because Buzz and Woody, I just don't even think it's a fair comparison because they've had like a whole film series. I think Dory and Marlin might be the best one-off dynamic duo.
Right. Well, yeah, we can't technically call it one-off because there's Finding Dory.
Yeah, but Dory is separated from them most of the time.
That's a fair point.
Although I know that's kind of the case with Toy Story as well.
Okay. Regardless. Yeah, you're right, though. They are an excellent duo. And what's great about the way we do this is that we have kind of surrogates like Nemo. Basically, Dory is the surrogate for Nemo to Marlin. And on the flip side, Gil is the surrogate Marlin for Nemo.
Right.
We have like a kind of a fill-in for father, fill-in for child here. And it's the fact that here's what kind of has dawned on me looking back on this, the whole 20 years later kind of vein. It's like, you look at Dory. Dory's a character, Marlin is a character who is held back by memory. That's what kind of stops him from doing all the stuff that he does. This is like, he's a character who's held back by fear and from the trauma that he suffered. And on the flip side, Dory is quite optimistic, glass half full, because of her lack of memory. Because again, she kind of keeps resetting. It's the whole goldfish gag,
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that these two are in need of each other because of that dynamic, which makes them a great Pixar duo. They absolutely need each other in that moment. Like Dory has information that Marlin needs, so he cannot be without her. And before he can,
it's great because it's like they definitely need each other plot wise, but I also think just as far as like the tone of the movie goes, like having someone as neurotic as Marlin, you need something to counteract that. So it's like
exactly
they really found a winning formula where it's like she's just as plot relevant as she is relevant to the actual tone and the beat of the movie and the pacing.
As much as I adore Marlin in this movie, if it was just Marlin no Dory, it'd be too sad a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like, oh man, this is just like the most harrowing kids movie I've ever seen. It's a man going crazy from grief, and he's not going to get anywhere. He's going to yeah. Anyway, so that's the thing. So we have these two characters paired together before Marlin has a chance to really kind of consider abandoning Dory here and just like going it alone. He runs into Bruce the shark. So let's talk about our sharks.
Yeah, I mean, this is of course just one. I mean, all the set pieces here are great, so it's like I don't want to just repeat myself and say like, oh, it's great. But the voice work on Bruce Dragon, we just talked about the voice actor, unfortunately, just recently passed.
Yes,
But
Barry Humphries. Yes.
yeah, but man, I mean, all of them are great, and just kind of like that great sort of subversion. I feel like, and this is definitely the first time we see blood in a Pixar movie, right?
Okay, well, if you want to be real, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth here. Okay, so if you want to be super, super technical about it, Bug's Life, we go to the bug bar and you have like mosquitoes that are being served up like blood, like little blood
Okay, I
platters.
definitely don't count that.
That's what I'm saying, but you're right.
I mean, that's a good deep cut pull. I give you credit there.
Literally,
Like, that's a
literally.
good like trivia thing, but
But that's what I'm saying. I'm with you. This is actually the first like real, use of. This is the first real use of blood, and then there's like a little scratch mark in The Incredibles, and that's how it goes. So.
But I mean, this is like I remember like as a kid, this genuinely got to me. Just it's like what's great about it is like it is just kind of like a small wound in the moment, and it's not that big of a deal. But then the chain reaction that it causes, it's a great kind of almost horror movie moment.
So here's what occurs to me looking at the shark sequence years later. Of course, we had the brilliance of the whole like the recovering kind of fishaholics meeting, kind of the AA undersea, the undersea AA, if you will. Fish are friends, not food, which it's an endearing idea that we're softening the threat. Now, the thing about it, because this movie opens with a barracuda, which is technically not a shark, which I had to learn as a kid because I always thought the barracuda was like another kind of shark, but apparently it's a fish with teeth. But yeah, so the bear. So basically, the sharks are, in theory, are barracudas on steroids. But in this movie, they're quite charming, and this is really clever because in real life, Jaws was always a misnomer, kids. Okay, this movie kind of sets the record straight on Jaws with the fun little, kind of Easter egg that we call the shark Bruce like Jaws, so it's kind of cute. But the fact is, sharks are not the evil menaces we portray them in Hollywood, but in reality, they only turn that way when blood enters the fray. So we show it quite charming. They're trying to change their ways. They're trying not to eat fish and everything. But they smell that blood, they're going to go crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Again, very kind of like scientifically accurate to a certain extent.
Yep, that's what I'm saying. Tiki, they only fudged, to my knowledge, they only really fudged one detail, and that one detail got cut out of the movie. So they kind of saved themselves there,
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. So that's what I'm saying. So we have like Marlon is the everyman doing all this for his son. I love that. I always love that Bruce gag. I never knew my father. But yeah, it's the fact that it's Marlon confronting every fear that he's had here. It just makes him such a relatable everyman that he's going up against like everything that could possibly kill him here. He's being chased through a sub by a fish eating shark. And we go through all these landmines and all this craziness, and he's just doing all these. He's going through all these hurdles, for the benefit of his son. And as a kid, man, I don't know about you. As a kid, all the nostalgia I had for Nemo was always directed to the scene where Bruce shows up. Because as a kid, because you're having such fun with like the introduction of Dory, and you're like, I wonder where we're gonna go next. Turn. Giant shark. I jumped in my seat as a kid. Like,
I mean, I feel like that's like just a great testament. Like that might be like one of the big kind of calling cards of the movie's editing.
I know, right? And it's just like so sudden, and of course the way we do the voice, and I can't even describe this properly, but it's a little subtle detail in the sound design. Barry Humphries, the way he sounds, and the scale of Bruce the Shark, the way he says "hello." You hear him saying that through rows and rows of teeth in like
he actually sounds like a shark, the same way that James Earl Jones and Jeremy Irons and the original Lion King actually sound like lions.
It's because there's like a scale, but also here's the subtle detail. There's a scale, there's the teeth, and then there's the fact that he sounds like he's underwater.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's just I'm sure it's a no-brainer. These are the beats you want to hit in a movie about fish and undersea life, but we're getting it all right, man.
Right. Let's see. So Lucas and Claude are both wondering, would Marlon even survive the journey to find Nemo without Dory? I would say with Marlin's persistence, he would. I don't know. He would definitely not give up. He would die trying. If
I would want Marlin to survive. The problem is, without him running in the door, he would not have found Nemo. I can say that with the utmost certainty. He would not have found Nemo.
Right. But his persistence again. I feel like unfortunately dying trying is probably the scenario there.
That's what I'm saying. He would. I mean, honestly, he would swim until he could swim no longer. That's honestly what I mean, this is going to sound really sad. I'm just going to put it out there for you.
Oh my God.
What likely happen? Marlin, determined the fish that he is, he would swim like in all directions until he eventually landed in Sydney, but it would probably be too late.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
I'm saying,
oh, boy.
He would swim the entire, I think he would swim the entire 75% of the globe, man. I think he would go for it,
All right.
All right, so the angle. So that's the thing. I love. So we have layers with the sharks. Again, we kind of correct the misnomer with the sharks there, and we see again. So the idea is that Marlin sees things that are terrifying, like sharks, based on his fear of the barracuda, and we kind of soften it. And then on the flip side, we have the anglerfish, which is utterly terrifying.
And again, great pacing happens literally like right after the sharks.
Yep, and not even just that. I mean, let's talk about the anglerfish. How great is the lighting with the anglerfish?
I love that. This is. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the teaser trailer, right? Is the anglerfish scene?
I can't say. Here's the thing. The teaser, if I recall, was the test footage of Marlin and Dory, kind of swimming through the air. I think it was the whale. Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think you're right. But they definitely did use the anglerfish as like the intro to the full trailer.
Yeah, I think.
Like, what do you see? I see a light.
Yeah, the anglerfish was in there. I can't remember how much it was in there, but you're right. I think we had that scene in there. We probably did.
And the anglerfish, I feel like very much kind of like the face of danger in this movie. Just as much so as Darla. Like, so much so that, like, in the actual, like, Nemo attractions, the two that we have, the anglerfish very prominent is, like, the biggest jump scare of either the Epcot attraction or Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage.
No, agreed. And that's what I'm saying. The closest thing we have to a villain, not counting, I guess technically Darla, but again, it's kind of more man, kind of in general, than it is like, actual, like, mustache twirler. The anglerfish does not quite get a redemption or anything. We don't technically, if you want to be really technical, I mean, we kill the anglerfish at the end of the movie, in which we have like the little tiny fish eat the anglerfish in a hilarious kind of like little post-credit gag. So if you look at it that way, it's like that's kind of the closest we get to like the softening of the anglerfish. We kill him off, but But yes, the anglerfish is just terrifying. And like Marlin, again, I love that we kind of explored this throughout this movie. Marlin has this fear because of what happened to his wife of getting eaten. It's the classic fish fear. You fear the bigger thing in the ecosystem eating you, and he gets eaten by the anglerfish very briefly.
Right.
He's terrified being eaten by the shark, and then there's the anglerfish, and then what's going to happen to him ultimately, Tiki? What's going to bring him to his son? He has to get eaten by the whale.
Yeah,
so I like that there's like a thing, and he has to be eaten by a sea is it? No, it's not a seagull. It's by
pelican.
Pelican, right? It's not a duck. It's a pelican. Yes. Anyway, but yes, that's it. There's like this runner of like the whole like the fish eat fish sort of thing. Okay, so of course with the anglerfish, the big thing we get out of this is P. Sherman 42, Wallaby Way, Sydney.
I'm sure that must have driven so many parents nuts. Just the repetition of that.
It's funny though. I mean, like I think we're so Nemo is a movie that is so in the lexicon right now. It's like every time we think of like the little fish movie, there's always like I found Nemo and everything. It's so ingrained in everything. But one of the things is also ingrained is everyone and their mother subconsciously, because it is said so much in this movie. I think we've all memorized it. We don't even have to think about it, right?
I'm sure. Yeah.
P. Sherman 42, Wallaby Way, Sydney.
Where is Nemo located in the film Finding Nemo?
By the way, just so you know, Ellen DeGeneres has said like a lot of the hype of like all the Finding Dory, like she's been waiting for years. She has said she has gone to Australia and she has looked for 42 Wallaby.
Oh my God!
It is fictional, just in case anyone's curious. Okay, 42 Wallaby Way is not an actual address.
God.
Okay, so maybe we should talk. Speaking of which, we should probably talk about the Tank Gang a little bit here.
Unless you want to just save them all for their own section.
We could. I mean, well, whatever you want to do, Tiki.
I honestly feel like we're kind of keeping a good pace with the Marlin and Dory side of things. So I kind of feel like maybe we should kind of like converge the two of them once we get to the turtles or something.
Okay. Let's build. Okay, building to the turtles here. We're not quite there yet. But we have the
because the turtles is that's where we get the his story is kind of spreading, right? So I say once we get to the story spreading, we can kind of get to the Tank Gang.
That sounds good. Okay, so the School of Fish, great John Ratzenberger.
Oh my God, one of my favorite John Ratzenberger cameos, man. Honestly,
now. Here's the thing. So the Ratzenberger, I love it. It's basically it's an excuse to show off the effect of like, hey, we can have a bunch of fish and kind of use our fish simulator here and kind of have some really cool. And we have found an excuse to get an actual school of fish versus like Nemo going to school, And if you think about it, it's kind of convenient that we have because think about it, at this point in the story, it's like one of those we don't care sort of moments. Like how. So at this point, we have no idea how we know where we're going. We don't know how to get there. And luckily there's a school of fish. But the logic is, though, at some point they're going to run into somebody and ask direction. So if they're going to run into anyone, let's just have it be a school of fish. So I think there's enough of a bias.
I mean, it's an entertaining way to get exposition out there. Yeah.
And it's very visual and very simple to digest.
I honestly don't even consider it a we don't care. I think it's just like you just said, it's like we needed a way to transition there, like logically they would ask for directions. It's just a visually engaging way to do that.
Because I mean, also it's the fact they are on the Great Barrier Reef, so it's like they are. I forget like how they are crossing the ocean, but we don't know precisely.
It'd be like pulling over at a gas station along Route 66 to ask for directions.
That's what I'm saying. They're probably hundreds of miles away, but it's still like along like the same location. So in theory, you'd have someone who would know where Sydney is. So there's a logic there. So again, it tracks. So. Our big moral is facilitated here, which is going to lead to my favorite scene in the movie, by the way, as we're getting there. So big moral. Dory is given important information by the School of Fish, by John Ratzenberger here. That, hey, remember, go through the trench, not over it. And Marlin does not take heed of that because he does not trust Dory, which, of course, Dory being the fill-in for Nemo, he does not put faith into his son that his son can figure these things out on his own and that he could kind of treat the son. Basically, he's not giving the son enough rope to kind of explore things as he should. And Dory is kind of a similar thing here where he should kind of if Dory's telling him something here, he should give it a shot. So, because Dory can't remember things, that doesn't mean she's not sure about things, even if she doesn't remember them.
Sure.
Which is an odd dichotomy, but it works. So this leads to Marlin again tricking her into going over the thing, which then leads to my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, I would say I don't think it's my favorite scene in the movie, but I would say this is like my favorite set piece.
Well, Tiki, when you put it like that, I mean, look, obviously it's going to be impossible to top the egg scene, but not counting the egg scene, the jellyfish forest is still it's the most memorable set piece for me, at least.
I would agree. Yeah.
That's the thing. So, I think deep down, I think the main reason I love this set piece, you and I think, kind of share this fear, but I have a crippling fear of bees. So jellyfish being the bees, being the bees of the sea, the sea's bees, one could say.
Just the way it's set up, it's such a good setup. It's like, okay, you can bounce on them, but you can't touch the tentacles.
I like that it's kind of like my fear but removed, so I'm not completely freaked out watching the scene. It's like it's the undersea version. I'm never going that far down undersea. I'll be, I'm not a beach goer. Right. Just the fact that there's this quiet beauty. And then you sort of a little squishy, and I love that there's this runner of they get really. We saw fish biology with the bioluminescent anglerfish thing, where it's they marlins get uncharacteristic, oh look, I feel happy. This is kind of nice. Again, it's the actual. It's like a more cinematic version, kind of a voice cinematic version of how the whole bioluminescent bait thing works for the anglerfish. So here it's kind of a runner of oh, it looks cute, and then just as they're talking, and as he's looking at the thing, we set up very well here that Marlin explains to Dory why it barely stung him, because the anemones, the whole reason the clownfish sticks in the anemones is that it builds up a tolerance that will sting the outsiders, but not the clownfish, which has kind of a jelly coating almost.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So the jellyfish appear silently, and they kind of become a color in the background, which then becomes a forest of jellyfish and just the utter quiet panic of what's going on there. And now this is very bad. And then Marlin being forced in this position of like, okay, it's almost like that scene from Rise of the Guardians where you're in a dangerous situation, you're trying to help the sister get off the ice, you kind of turn into a fun game. You don't have the kid panic, in this case Dory panic. It's like, okay, listen, the tops won't sing it. Dory, okay, we're gonna race, but here are the rules, okay? Touch the tops, don't touch the tentacles. And they're going off, and it's a fun thing. And just Marlin for a moment, he's cutting loose, he's having fun, and then he gets to the other side, and he looks back. No Dory.
And this pretty much happens like in the center of the film, and then it's a great kind of like almost like a character setback in a way of like, okay, shit, like now Marlin like really isn't going to want to cut back on anything.
Yep, and this moment, this is why I love this scene so much. I get jazzed out of my mind watching this scene where Marlon does an insanely heroic thing, and it's Albert Brooks already winning me over the performance, and just what he does here. He goes back in there and he's looking for Dory frantically again. Dory being that symbol and fill in for Nemo, especially like doubling down. There's already Marlon already having like a good moral compass and trying to help his fellow fish, but just primarily the fish that's very key to finding his son, but also the fish that is a fill-in for his son, sees Dory in peril, and he saves her. I love the detail of like, did I lose? Like, no, Dory, you're actually winning. You just got to stay awake, because like trying to get the person to stay awake so they don't get like a coma or anything, so they don't like get a concussion. So just like Marlon just racing out of there, just like stay awake, and just like can shock the crap out of as he's like getting out of there, and he passes out right after they clear the last hurdle. Just utterly amazing and enthralling a scene, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh god. Anyway, yeah. So that brings us to Crush.
Yeah, and so like I said, I think the sea turtle thing for me, it's I think my favorite, like the jellyfish is probably my favorite set piece, but my favorite moment in the movie is just the resolution of the sea turtle. Like, how old is the sea turtle? Like, I met a sea turtle and he's 150 years old.
How great is it? That's like a thing at the very end of the scene too, where it's like, oh god, I freaking Crush!
Right. Yeah. But I love Crush so much, man. I feel like Disney almost kind of like oversaturated him in marketing and turtle talk and all that. But just for being basic, he's basically a one scene wonder, if you will.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I mean, he brings so much personality and like honestly more weight and kind of like gravitas than I was expecting, because he's a really good example of kind of like the father that Marlin should strive to be.
Yeah, he's the laxed parent. That's Crush is that's the thing. Marlin, this is just so beautiful when you look at this characterization. I'm like, Marlin, you can probably tell I'm a big fan of this character. He's underrepresented every time people go back to the marketing of this film. You'll see all sorts of Nemo merchandise, never enough Marlin merchandise. I'm just going to say that. Marketers always bothers me. But no, seriously, the fact that Marlon, at the beginning, he was so jazzed for fatherhood, and then fear just like inserted into his life and made him question every parenting decision ever. Just kind of took all the fun out of it for him.
Like, Crush is almost kind of like a mirror of
the
kind of parent he would have been like.
Exactly. So they're paired so perfectly there, and like Marlon having this nice kind of like breather with Crush.
I feel like Crush is honestly kind of like the a go-to example for me of what I mean when I say that this movie plays better for adults than it does for kids, because when you're a kid, you are primarily focused on the accent and, like the fact that he's a cool surfer bro. You know what I mean? You really aren't picking up that much on the subtext with Marlin.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And I just love the fact that we have this kind of like, it's another kind of like marine biology sort of factoid that there's a little bit of like, it's a slight stretch. It's not an egg. Eventually they do find each other. The idea that turtles, they lay the eggs on the beach, and then the turtles will eventually reunite with their, I guess the herd, basically their parents and everything. They're going to reunite with the rest of the turtles, find their way home. So again, that is that's a great parallel for like what Marlin needs to do with Nemo, and I love it. It just makes all the sense in the world that we would have him like run into this turtle, And originally, Crush was very different. By the way, I don't know if you ever saw this. Like Crush originally was more of like he was like a kind of a hippie, and he basically was all he basically Crush was originally used to set up the whale.
Huh.
That's essentially what Crush's original purpose was in the story before they reinvented it to the whole fatherhood thing. So Crush was not originally a father, and they came up with that idea, and it was a brilliant choice, which gave him so much more legs to stand on.
And then, really quickly with Squirt, the thing that always stuck out to me was Squirt Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they actually do this because they did actually make a Crushes coaster, but it's in France. If they don't have Squirt giving the safety spiel on that coaster, then that is like the biggest missed opportunity.
Yeah,
because I love that safety spiel gag with him. It is like probably one of the biggest laugh out loud moments for me.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I love that the EAC, the whole doing the EAC East Australian Current as like a highway.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's one of the best bits of world building in the whole movie.
It's great world building. Also, it's kind of inspired from real life because what they would do is they would have a lot of these. One of the cool things in the writing process, you have the big three on this movie. You have Stanton, Bob Peterson, and Lee Unkrich. They would go for a drive and they would like talk story with each other and like, grab some fast food. They eat in the car and they would just kind of talk over. That's how they came up with the initiation scene in the tank. So I guess bridging to that a little here. Marlin tells his story to the turtle kids, and basically the word gets spread about what he's trying to do, and have this beautiful like Thomas Newman score that's playing as we're seeing across the oceans. By
this
the way,
might be my favorite scene in the movie. Like individual scene is the word spreading. Like because like you said, with the score, thematically how rich it is, and then just how heartwarming it. And okay, so yeah, let's set up the tank gang stuff.
Well, also something to mention too is that again that was another thing they figured out on like one of those kind of EAC-esque drives. Like they came up with like a big story problem. It's like how the heck is Nemo gonna learn what Marlin's been up to? And that's how they came up with that. Mm-hmm. Okay, yes. So the tank gang. So this is just an insanely wonderful bit of illogical logic at its finest here. The idea of like, okay, if you took a bunch of fish in a tank in a movie where we have talking fish, like how would they respond? Like, what's the irreverency we're gonna get here? Well, okay, we'll be like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
You could absolutely do a whole movie just based on this premise.
Essentially, they're in a non-padded cell. That's essentially what the deal is. Where it's like roughly like 4 glass walls and just like So we have Gil, Bloat, Bubbles, also an excellent cast of so many people that we love.
Oh my god, I know.
You have Willem Dafoe as Gil. You got Bloat, the great Brad Garrett as Bloat. You got Stephen Root as Bubbles.
I know that caught me off guard.
You have Austin Pendleton as Gurgle from the Muppet movie. They've been trying to get him in there since Toy Story, apparently, and they finally found an excuse to get him into a movie. You have Vicki Lewis as Deb and Flo. You have Joe Rampt as Jacques, and you have Allison Janney as Peach.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. So yeah, Willem Dafoe. He's just so wonderful in this movie, and I love how he perfectly counterbalances, what Marlin is.
I also love how it's literally the year after Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Like this was like his big like post Spider-Man role, and like what a thing to follow up with.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's ingrained in childhood forever because of that.
Right.
No Willem Dafoe, if not for Green Goblin, for Gil, and both roles would start with the letter G.
So first of all, with Gil, I love the the fin thing with him. I mean, I feel like that is like one of the biggest pieces of symbolism. Yep. Like it really just brings the fin symbol together.
You have Nemo saying, "I have a bad fin, never stop me." Just oh god. Yeah, I mean it's wonderful, and again, I love the fact that he's like a mentor figure. He's kind of like if Marlin allowed Nemo to do things that may have put him at risk, and actually did put him at risk. It's like what if you had a father figure that let you go a little too far?
Right. So I love that it's not just like I wish that you were my dad. It's like I love how. Like there's a really great. It's like a Goldilocks kind of just right where it's like. There's definitely a bond that forms between Nemo and Gil, But at the same time, never for a moment do you think that Gil is replacing Marlin as Nemo's father figure in his mind.
Sure, and I like that even if that is on the table for a bit, you do have like just the
I don't
that
think it's on the table at all, honestly. I think
well,
the movie smartly avoids that at all.
well, no, I agree. I'm just saying that we have like a moment in which we do mention the whole like like your father's coming for you, and it's sort of like no, he's too afraid of the oceans. I'm not saying he's picking Gil over his father, but it's the fact that even if it were on the table, we have this great moment with Gil that puts things in perspective, like in a really great way in which Gil Nemo almost dies during the first attempt at the David Fincher escape plan. Which, by the way,
Right,
I mean, did you ever hear that term before? You've heard about the David Fincher escape. That's the nickname for the sequence, right?
No. What does it have to do with David Fincher?
Well, it's the way they edited the sequence. I don't know. I don't know the specifics of why, but I guess it's like they basically the way that when Gil lays out the plan after the initiation, he and we do all these the sequence that has like all the clear cuts, and we see him like roll from the POV of the baggies, like when they're in the baggies and they're rolling.
Okay, yeah, I could see it.
So the idea is they wanted to edit that sequence. Lee Unkrich wanted to edit that sequence like a David Fincher movie. So it's called, the nickname for the sequence is the David Fincher escape plan. Which, by the way, features the pizza plant truck. Anyway, so but yeah, so the first attempt at that scene, you have just that sobering moment, and I love how we play it on Defoe here, just like where he, like Allison Janney's Peach is like saying like Gil, don't make him do it again, just like pleading, and Gil is so desperate to escape, he realizes he almost got this kid killed, and he feels awful about it. And I just love how he kind of plays the sobering realization, like no. We're not going to do it again. It's like, and he's very sad in a somber way. He's apologetic about it, but he's also there's like a touch of selfishness to the character. I really like that.
Sure.
Gil sees Nemo,
but at the same time, like he could very easily be written as a villain, and he's not.
That's what I'm saying. Like Gil does see Nemo as a tool for escape, but he does like and does want to protect the kid. He does.
Right.
He doesn't want.
Again, it's such a delicate balancing act. Like so many things could have gone wrong with the character, and they just nailed it.
And remember, Gil is like the only other fish in that tank that's from the ocean. So he and Nemo, there's a lot there in terms of they were brought there. And also, Gil is kind of like if Nemo never escapes the tank. I mean, assuming Darla, let's just say Darla was not a factor here, he'll end up like Gil.
Right.
So of course we have like the initiation, which is named Shark Bait Boo-ha. It's a fun, silly little sequence, and it's basically added in there so that we have like more. We like the tank gang, and we emphasize that we're not just purely using them; that we do kind of like these characters. All right, so let's see. So then, of course, you have the big inspiring moment, which Nigel explains that like, hey, your father's coming for you, and that really inspires Nemo, and he gets the plan right, and we and. Just to show you that Pixar, they dot the I's and cross all the T's in the storytelling. They fundamentally broke down like you could actually clog up a filter in this hypothetical situation. Like you could this plan actually would work.
And this is again one of my favorite moments is when Nemo, like without hesitation, without Gil saying anything, just automatically goes for it. Like that's all he needs to hear is that Marlin's coming for him.
Exactly. Like he knows it for a fact. Like I heard it took on 3 sharks. Yeah. So all that's great. So speaking of which, so Darla.
Oh man, I mean, first of all, just what a great design.
Oh yeah, for sure. Did you ever hear? I don't know if you ever heard about this too. The Darla's an Easter egg. It's a reference to Darla K. Anderson, who's like the producer on on a lot of the Pixar films, and she and Andrew Stanton go way back. And the idea is they pull pranks on each other. So this is Andrew Stanton named like very directly named.
You're a fish murderer.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was.
I love how Darla in like the Pixar lexicon of villains. She's essentially like an even more destructive but way less malicious version of Sid.
That's a
because like Sid, she's actually like legitimately murdering characters.
It's gonna be like a weird,
but she doesn't have any malice though. I mean, I don't even really think she's that bratty of a kid. She's just kind of acting her age.
Yeah, she likes fish. That's the idea.
Yeah, right.
again, she's a little hyperactive around the fish is the problem. I mean, here's the thing. So one, just real quick aside, it feels like in a sense she's kind of like a weird hybrid of Sid and Boo. If you look at kind of the progression of our human character, of our human,
it is kind of
characters.
trippy that she comes one movie after Boo, where
Yeah.
Boo made everyone fall in love with her.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So Darla again.
Other side of the parenthood coin, kids.
So speaking of the parenthood coin, that was bringing my point with Darla. Darla, in a sense, when you look back on it, I was like, she's kind of there might be a layer of kind of like, you know, the whole a danger of parenting style, even though we don't see her parents. Just the fact that, like, you know, we're not curbing the nature of our kids sometimes in terms of, like, you know, Darla, maybe let's have someone say, don't shake the bag with the fish in it after the first fish dies.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, and but again, more accurately, as we kind of hinted at earlier.
I mean, like, come to think of it, like, wouldn't you think that would be like a very serious conversation that P. Sherman would have with her, like, especially considering the picture of her with the dead fish is literally in his office?
Well, that's you're right about that too.
Plot hole.
No. We established that this dentist is, you know,
he's pretty oblivious.
He's oblivious. Apparently good at it.
The more we're talking about, I think this dentist really is the closest thing this movie has to a villain.
But more incompetent villain. That, like, intentionally, he's not a sinister.
Right, but I'm saying, like, if it weren't for him, like, I hold him way more accountable for the bag shaking thing than Darla.
So this brings me to the other thing too. So again, we have, like, if nature is kind of a thing in this movie that kind of like our circling thing where we're not quite having villains, but we're representing nature. Is that this is the nature of man, the irresponsibility of man that we're seeing in a few ways here. Again, the whole idea of, like, tropical fish as pets thing. And it's like, it's like, hey, I want to go out of my way, have fancy fish. I'm going to pluck them from the ocean and put them in my fish tank. I'm going to give them to my niece, and just, if she shakes the bag, I'll go out there on my boat that I bought with all my dentist money and make another one.
Oh, it's dentist money.
Give
me all your dentist money.
But yeah, so it's kind of like a hint at, like, a somewhat of an environmental message here, But again, more so, Dora's just a ticking clock. That's really what she is.
Sure.
But I like there's it's like a subtle layer without being preachy about it. So it's nice. Okay, so let's see. Speaking of going to the mouths of man and everything, I like that also. If you think about it, P. Sherman, I think the idea is he's lucked into being a really good dentist. I think that's kind of the gag.
Dragon, I'm not gonna lie. I've always been sort of low-key fascinated about what his family dynamic is like. Like if the brother is like, I always imagine that the brother is like a marine biologist who's less financially successful than him.
Well, remember, we didn't see who the other diver was. It's entirely possible that was his brother.
That's true. Yeah.
And for all we know,
I don't know. I would like to know what the relationship is like between the Sherman siblings.
Because remember, they are going. It's not just like they're not fishing; they're like scuba diving. So
there
is a fascination with the undersea life there. So Okay, so let's talk about the whale. So Dory speaks whale, which retroactively we've given an origin.
Hello, Brendan. Hi, Dory.
Can you help us?
Oh God. Okay, now I am just that is totally just like a fucking like Oscar bit waiting to happen. No, that's how we bring back Ellen DeGeneres' public image, folks. Have her do a playful bit with Brendan Fraser.
Tell me that wouldn't be delightful. Though.
It would be delightful. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, this is ridiculous. Just go with me for a minute here.
Oh God.
Imagine like almost like an SNL sketch, but like SNL with a budget though, so actually look really good. Imagine you have Brendan Fraser in the makeup and everything.
Oh my God!
And he got a fish. It's Dory, and Dory is like speaking like, "Hello."
Oh my God!
It's like she's speaking to me.
Okay, I'm gonna go one more though. I'm gonna raise you.
Oh God.
Okay, so Liz is in the room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she is very concerned because the fish is clearly not talking to Charlie, but Charlie is like fully convinced, like he is having a full-on conversation with this fish. And Liz is just like, Charlie, this is not good, Charlie. You're legitimately hallucinating at this point. We really need... No, Charlie, I'm real. All right. We've kind of took this off a cliff.
In all seriousness, though, Dory, she speaks well, and this is again, it's kind of like we get into Marlin's fear of being eaten, in which we're kind of homaging a lot of the great Disney stuff here, which we're eaten by the whale, and we have kind of our emotional, kind of like our catharsis kind of happens here, where we have like Marlin at his low of lows. He is at least initially at his low lows before he thinks Nemo has died.
The weird thing is this movie has a very, very quick like low of lows to third act resolution. That's one thing I've always noticed with it.
But tell me how great just this moment is there, where Marlon is just like he's ramming against like the bristly teeth of this whale. It's like, I have to tell my son how old turtles are. You can see. I mean, I love in this bit. You see how exhausted this poor fish is after everything he's been through. He's in an utterly hopeless position right now. He has no way out of this giant creature. He's been eaten, and it's like, here's what's so perverse about this, man. It's a living separation from his children here, and that he's so close. It's like his wife is eaten in the most horrific way possible, and now he has been eaten, but he's alive and knowing that he's never going to see his son again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, but thank goodness Dory is there to get him out of Dodge. Now, here's a question for you, Tiki. 20 years later, question. Now, do you think Dory saved them with the whale talk after they were swallowed, or do you think the whale's intention from the beginning was, I'm going to give these guys a lift in my mouth?
I'd like to think that's what the whale's intention was.
That's the thing, because Dory did ask for help, and then
that's true. And Finding Dory does establish that the whale speak is very legit.
That's what I'm saying. So you're saying the whole time it was like the whale was, was like saying, okay,
yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna roll with that. That's a fun headcanon.
Yeah, so we have like the tongue is like a huge moment, like a literal huge moment of trust here. And again, I love how he slips in that moment, calling Dory Nemo. You think you can do it? You can't, Nemo.
Oh,
it brings it full circle to that opening, and he kind of realizes, okay. And then of course they're eaten again by Nigel, and we have Nigel versus the seagulls.
Yeah, that actually really threw me off on the rewatch. It was kind of crazy just how late into the movies the seagulls come in, considering how iconic they are.
I just love that.
But I mean, that just goes to show that literally, like, this is one of those Pixar movies where every single beat is kind of iconic. It's kind of like the original Shrek in that way.
You have like kind of like a dual matchstick moment in this movie. I think the literal matchstick moment is the Aqua Scum.
Mm-hmm,
in terms of, okay, we have the David Fincher escape plan all worked out. We know exactly how it's going to go.
Yeah, like most of the Tank gang storyline gets wiped clean with like, oh shit, okay, it's clean. Like we wake up and good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day. The tank is clean. The tank is clean. That really is a great kind of matchstick moment where the like, oh shit, okay, what do we do?
I love Austin Pendleton and the way he says, curse you, Aqua Scum. But yeah, so that's our main matchstick moment. Then you have like the broader matchstick moment of like, how the heck are Marlin and Dory going to get from the bay to that dentist office?
I feel like that's been like a movie-wide question, though.
Yeah, sure. So you're right, though. It's kind of saying from the beginning, how the heck are these two fish going to get into that dentist office? So again, so we have this thing where we have this harrowing sequence of just it's an insane sequence more than anything. It's the fact of like, if you want to see a son, jump in my mouth.
Can I just say, I really do love Nigel. Like, he's just another, like, this is just such a perfect cast of characters, and he is just another character that just really plops.
Oh, for sure. And Jeffrey Rush, too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Again, same year, almost the same month as Pirates of the Caribbean. That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a sea basis. Again, we can tell where they were fishing for actors.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, no, he's great. And again, of course, he had to tell that really important kind of like, he basically had to recap the movie for Nemo. He did really well.
Right.
All right, so we have this insane sequence where he's flying up there, and I love this. We see Nemo in peril, and Marlin's like, no, we're going in there. And he pulls on his tongue, and he's forcing him in the And they're like the tank. I love it's like a messy like introduction to the tank gang too of just this whole thing of like, hey, like he's over there. He's gonna throw him in the trash can. Stop him. Oh god. Anyway, so it doesn't mean. But again, think about how horribly this could have gone. There, Nemo. We have to fake Nemo's death. We the audience have to know he's okay. Marlin has to absolutely think that he's dead, and it can't be like a ham-fisted way in which you see the loss.
Yeah,
of
again,
Marlin.
like a lot of this movie is a balancing act. This scene is no exception to that.
And also we have a lot of haunting goodbyes too, where like we have that really somber scene where Nigel, like again, Nigel's been like the biggest fan of this father-son reunion the whole movie. And he thinks too Nemo has died, and he says, "I'm so sorry about," expressing his condolences for Nemo. And it's like there's like no acknowledgement from Marlin at all. It's just like a somber thing where he just flies off, and then he has that goodbye with Dory.
Mm-hmm.
Where Dory's like begging him to stay, like because when he's there, she remembers better than she ever has before. And now, in context,
so this is the big low of lows of the movie.
Yeah,
and again, I think it's really impressive that it happened so late into the runtime, and yet it's so impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and what's really haunting, and again, this is one of those examples of like, as a child, I didn't really understand how impactful this line is, but the whole exchange with Dory, where it's like, when I'm with you, I don't forget, and then Marlin's like, but the thing is, Dory, I want to forget. Yeah, and Dragon, that is like really impactful to me. Like that is like some super mature storytelling, because it's like to me, that kind of resonates with like there are some people in your life where it's like they might not even do anything negatively to you, but because they are associated with a negative time in your life, there almost has to be that disconnection for you to move forward. And obviously Marlin and Dory don't actually part here, but just that idea of like, look, Dory, I appreciate you, but like, being around you is going to remind me of my trauma of losing my son. And right now, all I want to do is forget. I mean, I don't know. Am I making any sense there, Dragon? No, that line really impacted me in a way that it never did as a kid.
No, you are making sense. I mean, technically, this is like Marlin thinking this is the last time he's going to see Dory. So, I mean, it kind of is, like, in theory, like the last time they were going to see each other until they are reunited by I
mean, I hate to even suggest it, Dragon, but, like, do you think there's a possibility that Marlin is, like, going to off himself after this?
Well, I mean, he's a fish, so, I mean, unless he, like, says, like, hey, Bruce, here you go.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, there are ways to do it.
I mean, he is, look...
I mean, I hate to get that dark with it, but he really has, like, basically given up the will to live at this point.
Here's the thing, you're not wrong about that. As I'm saying, all I know is we're seeing Marlin at an absolute low point, which he has lost everything. He's just trying to, with the loss of Nemo and seeing that his son has assumedly died, like before his eyes. This is like him losing just everything he's got, and Dory's like the last thing that he kind of cuts off for him. So it's, I mean. Again, it's kind of a weird concept, fish suicide, but I mean, it's, he's not.
I'm just saying, maybe that's why he knows that he can't be with Dory.
I mean, the way I read it, Tiki, simply is that it's kind of a really clever way of epitomizing these two characters, and that Marlin wants to forget his tragedy, and
sure,
needs to cling on to something. What makes it sadder to me is that when we put Finding Dory in context, it's like, knowing, that's when you it's like, how much she strived to remember and how alone she really is. Like that's it. That's the most cutting thing ever to Dory right there. Is her being just so desperate to remember and being completely alone,
Mm-hmm.
So what's really nice is that Nemo finds Dory all on his own.
Oh yeah. God, that moment of remembrance where it's like, I love how they play it, Dragon. I love how much they draw it out with Dory, where it finally dawns on her.
When she sees Sydney, it all just comes flowing back. And I love that she stumbled on thinking of Sydney because of everything. That was like really sad part of like that monologue she had. Just saying, well, you see, P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, and she's kind of lost it, like when she was trying to make a point of like, I remember things better with you here. Anyway, yeah, so she, she kind of reunites with Nemo, and it all comes back to her, and it's like a huge, glorious moment. It's like, your father, we gotta find him. And then, of course,
I'm going to be honest with you, Dragon. I'm not saying it's bad at all, but I honestly kind of forgot that the whole just swim down climax was even a thing, and I don't really think the movie needs it.
Well, well, it's a big moment for like Nemo and Marlin to really kind of like trust each other. That's like the payoff of everything.
Sure,
It's kind of
yeah.
like, plus they're saving a lot of fish, and it's paying off that we kind of set up well with the tank gang, which they kind of like set up like
I
swim
guess
down in the
it's
net.
just kind of like, I feel like at this point the movie's already kind of like, like peaked as far as like the action and like, I don't know. It's the one thing in the movie pace wise that feels a little bit off.
Well, you have to have Nemo take a risk, and Marlin has to approve that risk. So
Sure,
you have
sure.
to have a moment in which that happens. So,
I get
and I
your
mean,
logic there. Yeah.
plus again, also it brings us full circle to the start where it wasn't fishing per se, but it was man taking fish. So man's taking fish again, but we're not gonna separate them again. We're not gonna. And
Mhm.
Dory was at risk here too. That's the thing. It was really they could have as
Yeah, I
much.
guess that is a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but here's a really cool thing. In real life, this is based on a real thing. In Norway, a bunch of codfish were being fished, and basically they all swam down in unison and capsized the boat.
Oh, that's crazy.
So the reason the boat doesn't capsize in the movie is Roy E. Disney. Roy E. Disney was a sailor,
Oh
and he
my
said, "Look,
god.
it's bad luck for a ship to be capsized." That was like the one request
Oh
that
my
he had in the
god.
whole
That
movie because
does
he
sound
loved the
like such a
movie.
Roy E. Disney note.
That's the thing. So he looked at the whole movie, he loved it, and he said, "Okay, I have one note for you. Just don't capsize the boat."
Oh my god, I love that. I love that.
So that's everything. So they all swim down in unison, which pays off everything. Again, the Marlin Nemo story, but also
You know
Dory's
what? In a way, it is
philosophy.
kind of like this movie's equivalent of Take My Hand.
I know, right? It is take my
Yeah,
hand, Peter.
yeah. When I think about it.
Then it's also the whole like just keep swimming, just kind of giving a little
Sure,
little
sure.
unison there. But yeah, and then of course after doing all this, we have again it's the egg callback, and the egg callback very much is "Take My Hand, Peter" from Guardians of the Galaxy, as you said.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
this whole thing of like him swimming down there and just like remembering back to like finding Nemo in the first place in that vulnerable state, just having this. Because again, Nemo has done something very heroic here, and it was rather it was rather chaotic, and you'll know what's happened. And he's been through so much, and he's like caught into that net that's fallen on him, and we bring him back with the sea turtles, man.
Mhm.
And that Thomas Newman score.
Oh yeah.
Yep, and then that brings us to our ending, where we go full circle to the school. Where Nemo's going to school, and Marlin's getting out of show. Also, we didn't mention this at all. We got to get in there somewhere. The hilarious idea that Albert Brooks, very popular comedian, really talented comedian, knowing how to tell the joke so horribly it is funny. And this is the idea that a clownfish is not funny.
I do
And
really like. I forgot that at the end of the movie he actually does nail the joke. That's a nice beat for his arc.
it's really funny.
What?
I saw this thing they did for like the 10-year anniversary of Nemo, and they were talking about it. And Bob Peterson, Andrew Stanton laughed during a take, and Albert Brooks never repeats takes, so they lost this really good outtake that they might have used in the movie. It's really funny where Albert Brooks is telling the mollusk joke. And he says, "So there's this mollusk and a sea cucumber, and they didn't walk." He just yells at himself. But then Andrew Stanton laughed, and they couldn't use the take.
Ah,
So, here's the thing: Marlon just gets angry while he's telling the joke, and it's such an Albert Brooks thing. Anyway, I think they made the right choice ultimately, but it was funny. Anyway, but yeah, so he tells the joke right. With fronds like these, who needs an enemies?
mhm.
So then we have this beautiful Father's Day moment here, where after everything they've been reunited, and Nemo says, "I love you, Dad," to kind of counteract the "I hate you, Dad," and go have an adventure. And we just have this beautiful moment where he says, "Goodbye, son."
Yeah, it's a pretty perfect ending. I also love that Squirt's there as an exchange student. That's
Mm-hmm.
adorable.
Even brought the sharks back just for the heck
Mhm,
of it.
mhm. I love that the sharks are buddies with Dory specifically.
Yeah, and Dory's loved. We didn't really see this, but I like the implication that all the fish are probably looking at Dory funny. It's like, why are you with? Why are you in that group? Like, fish are friends.
Right, right, right.
Yep, fish are friends, not food.
It's
Yeah,
almost kind of like Mantis at the end of Guardians 3.
a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, and then we have our post credit where the tank
It's not
gang.
really a post credit, actually. It's like right at the end.
Well, yeah, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, essentially it's at the end.
It feels like a post credit.
Fine mid credit, all right. So it's if you listen to the DVD, there's an in memoriam for Glenn McQueen, and then there's this. So it's kind of,
Okay.
but you're not wrong. Essentially, it's right after the ending. So yeah, so the tank gang they escaped. Their plan worked. They somehow broke the Aqua Scum. I don't even want to know. I kind of want to know how, but I don't need to know how. And yeah, they escaped in the baggies, and they're still floating. Like now what?
Now what?
I gotta admit,
Now, you know what? Like, I've always gone back and forth on, like, I feel like I very much missed their presence in Finding Dory, but that's such a perfect way to end out their arc, and the fact that we never actually know what happens to them. Like, I do kind of appreciate that.
By the way, I mean, I kind of forgot to mention this. I love Gil's sacrifice there when he saved Nemo, when he launched himself into Darla's onto Darla, and then they like flipped him into the drain. Like that was so great. But yes, yeah, that's the thing. I always, when you look at Finding Dory, is always that there was like a deleted plot line, which I gotta admit, a part of me wishes, I'm with you, Tiki. A part of me wishes it was there, but ultimately it would have like maybe robbed us of what we have with the gag of the tank gang, which like you would have had like, you know, Marlin and Gil interacting, which is something I've always wanted to see, but we've never gotten.
Right. I feel like another version of Finding Nemo 2 would have been like that sort of interaction. Like,
and they contemplated doing that.
Up.
They contemplated doing that, but the problem is it still would have just kind of taken them out of their way, because at the end they were still separating Marlin from the Marlin Nemo from the Dory story, and we're going to need to do stuff in the meantime. It just felt more.
I mean, it would have been interesting if the tank gang would have ended up in the aquarium or something. I don't know.
I think the idea is they were going to help them break into and break out of the aquarium. But as I'm saying, in theory, it still sounds good. And I would be lying if I said I didn't want to at least see the storyboards of that sequence. I don't.
But at the same time, like I said, I do appreciate, just for the sheer sake of like comedic integrity, the fact that their story is over with now what.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I guess final thoughts, Dragon. By the way, the Bobby Darin music, just a great cut to credits, like song choice.
I 1000% agree.
I mean, this is basically a perfect movie, and I like honestly revisiting it like for the first time through like really like adult lens. I don't know, Dragon. I might have to like. It's been a while since we've done Pixar rankings, but this is pretty definitively in my top 5 right now. I mean, I think there's a, you know, what you said about the every part of the buffalo. I mean, it is very much like there is no dull part of this movie at all. Like, as much as I love Encanto, there is that one section of Encanto where she has to, you know, go into Bruno's tower, and it's basically just like a kind of like just a quest, just for the sake of giving the movie a little bit of an action beat. But this is like, no, this is very much like it's perfect all the way through. So, I mean, just, you know, like 20 years later, it's kind of crazy how first of all, I think the animation is just like it's not aged a day. I don't think it looks bad at all. I think it just looks gorgeous as always. But yeah, just altogether, just a perfect movie.
Yeah, I mean, again, 20 years later, this movie is just a testament to good storytelling and great characters, and just this is a beautiful father-son story. You know, it's, I don't always echo everything I said earlier, but again, this is like the perfect Father's Day movie, and it's just, it just reminds me, like, Andrew Stan's always one of my go-to guys at Pixar, in terms of, I love the way he crafts a story. I love the way he tells it. I mean, I've loved all the other stuff that he's done, but this still is like, it's really hard to top Nemo. At the end of the day, Nemo is just, it's, you know, it's one of the founding bricks of Pixar. You know, it's like Nemo is like, you know, it's like when we just get the facility, Nemo's like is like the gleam that we add to the atrium. You know, it's just something special. And I'm just, you know, it changed the game. It raised the stakes. I mean, again, it's in the whole like DreamWorks versus Pixar of it all. You know, think about it. You know, we have like the whole Ants versus Bugs Life debacle, and then you have, kind of like Shrek steal Monsters Inc.'s Oscar, and then you have, it was earned. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, you know, Pixar is like Monsters Inc. Man, come on. And then you have them chasing Nemo's shark tail, because they had so many fish movies and fish parody movies because of what Nemo did, because it entered the lexicon, because it became so iconic, and it still remains so iconic and just so flawless. And again, it is kind of Pixar's equivalent to Lion King in terms of the everlasting popularity. It's
Sure.
it's a thing of beauty, and I'm still amazed that it holds up as well as it does, and just that I mean, I had a birthday recently, man. I spent it rewatching Nemo, and it was a good way to do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so big thanks to Theme Park Priest, Lucas Green, and Warp Monarch for joining us in the comments. Dragon, I have one very important question for you. I think we just, with all this talk of fatherhood and whatnot, I think we just need to get one thing really clear, all right?
Okay.
So just what is Marlin's relationship to Nemo?
He's his biological father.
There we go. I'm surprised we resisted the urge to do that.
That's because we didn't mention any non-biological fathers.
Well, Dragon, in Finding Nemo 2, if Gil was involved, the tension would be that Nemo would see Gil as a non-biological father.